The Tim Heale Thirsty Thursday live stream from 7 until 9 weekly. Here's your host, Tim Heale.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Thursday live stream special. This week we're talking, what are we talking? Yes, veteran suicide awareness. So what are we talking? We've got guests coming in. So, question for you guys. Have you ever had suicidal thoughts? If yes, stick around. Have you ever been depressed? Do you sometimes feel as though the world's on top of you? These are all things that we can help with. I've got some terrific guests coming on this evening. We're going to talk through some of these issues, which may help. So stick around and we'll get going. Okay, right, where are we? Let's put some context into this. I'm going to start by, I'm just going to show you some statistics. So I'm going to pull this up first, just to give you an idea of the suicide rates. Now, these figures come from the ONS. They've been compiled by, I got these off of the Samaritans, and I'll show you something of the Samaritans later. Up until just recently, the government have said that they're not showing the veterans. They just lumped them in with everybody. On average, in a year, there's somewhere in the region between 5,000 and 6,000 people in England taking their own lives. And you can see on that graph that it has been on the increase. And clearly there are a lot more males than there are females taking their lives. And it's a similar picture across the country. So, for instance, in Wales, the numbers there again have been going up. Again, up until recently, they haven't been recording whether they're veterans or not. And I'll come to that shortly. Scotland, again, there are 20 fewer apparently. It's a wonder. It just depends on how they recorded. However, they're not recorded as a suicide death until the coroner has carried out their investigation. So you just need to bear that in mind. Again, in Northern Ireland, the figures are they're unnecessary, really. With the amount of help out there, people shouldn't be going down this road. And it's just a tragedy. And the veterans community are a large portion of that we can tell. This is for the armed forces since 1984, and the numbers have been fairly sort of steady through the rough years. And if we come forward, I think they're not really showing a significant increase at the moment. I think that's to come. If you look at the sort of the numbers here, this was from sort of 84 to 95, but go up to 2000. That's probably the Northern Ireland, Falklands issues. They're starting to come forward now. There's still veterans from the Falklands that are suffering, that are taking their lives. So across the armed forces, I mean, there's the breakdown. The vast majority are army that have been taking their lives. probably because they are the ones that see more action, and that's possibly some of the reasons why they're seeing it. And the methods of suicide, that's been recorded as well. So it seems like hanging, strangulation, and suffocation is the most popular way of doing it. And using firearms is down the bottom, probably because it's slightly harder to get hold of. So we can go through that in some detail at a later stage. But what I'd like to do is bring in my first guest. So, Velleta, boom, you're in the room.
Good evening, Tim. Nice to see you tonight.
And you, darling. How have you been?
Very well, thank you. Been busy working during the day and looking after Muzzy. So, yeah, very well, thank you.
Good. So you got a particular story, haven't you? And you've been looking at some of the figures for me. And some of the stuff around the peripheries.
Yes. I mean, a lot of these figures won't really be, the veterans won't be interested in the figures. They just want help, don't they, really?
Yeah.
I mean, statistically, the government, I think, are failing veterans where none of this is being recorded. And, you know, we've had many conflicts over the years for them to be able to do that. But it's like the veterans don't matter, which is wrong, totally wrong, really. Yeah, I mean, one of the groups, Veterans Against Suicide, I follow them on Facebook and see what they do, and they have brought out a ICE card. I don't know if you've heard of that, Tim. Have you?
No, an ICE card.
It's an ICE card. It's a number you can carry round. They hand it out to veterans, and if they need any help, they can call this number. It's just another way, I think, another alternative to the Samaritans. I mean, there are a lot more groups out there now than there used to be. I mean, the government really are failing, or the system is failing veterans, but a lot of fellow veterans have seen the problems that their comrades have had, and there's a lot of them out there now trying to help in any way that they can, and with their experience, which I think is brilliant. A lot of the suicide rates, I think, are tied in with, you know, a lot of veterans who end up being homeless. Homeless and suicide, I think, go hand in hand. I don't know how you feel about that, Tim.
Yeah, I think that has a lot to do with it at the moment. I'm down here in Gosport, and there's a group just down in the high street called C2U that see a lot of veterans, a lot of homeless veterans in the area, and they're helping them out with food. They're helping them out with trying to get accommodation, work, and that sort of thing. They're doing a lot at the moment to be able to get in there with local veterans. There's also another group that, I think it's a national group, but we've got a big following here in Gosport. I'll just bring them up. Called Veterans Outreach Support, and what they do is they support veterans across the piece. Once a month, on I think it's the first Wednesday of the month, they have a drop-in centre where they get all the agencies in to help out veterans. So I'd nip over there. In fact, I was over there last month, and they just happened to have Veterans UK there who gave me some advice, and hopefully I'll get a little bit of extra support from it. See
Good.
whether it happens or not. But you
Yeah.
know, it these things take time. But they had the Samaritans there. They had local councils. They had lots of different agencies there that are specifically there to help veterans. And it was busy. And these guys put on lots of stuff throughout the month. So if you're in the Hampshire area, these guys are really good, and they have drop-ins all over the place. The Isle of Wight, there's a group here in just outside Gosport in Stubbington. They meet once a week on a Thursday for a couple of hours, and buns and stickers and that sort of thing. There's another group that meet up at Lee Hub first Wednesday of the month, and they do a lot for veterans. So we've got great support here in Hampshire, particularly for our veterans.
Well, I mean, there's not as many in Dorset, but you've got someone. There's a chap who runs the Veterans Hub in Weymouth, and he does things very similarly to what you've just said, with having a lot of veterans come in. He has different, like the Samaritans and employment people come in. People to help with housing and all sorts of things, and he's very good. And next door he's got a veteran shop, and a little while ago I took bags and bags of clothing down there to the shop, and anything they raise in that shop goes to the veterans, to the charity, which is brilliant. So yeah, I mean, it's getting there, I think, Tim, but it's awareness. And I think there'll always be veterans who fall through the cracks, but it's minimizing it as much as possible than what it used to be. That, you know, for crisis helplines, I know there's the Samaritans, but there's also another Facebook group called Shout Out to Veterans 24/7, which is a crisis help group. And if you click on their link, it will send a direct message to them privately, and you're able to talk to someone 24/7. So that's another help, other than the Samaritans, because you know, the Samaritans are lovely, but they're not perhaps veteran orientated. And while suicide is a suicide, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think veteran suicide has slightly different implications, and why they're doing it, why they feel they have to do that. What do you think on that, Tim?
I think there's probably more veterans feeling that way. And there's lots of contributing facts why a veteran feels that way.
Yeah.
When you're in the forces, you I wouldn't say you're sort of wrapped up in cotton wool so much, but you've got that support network around you. You've got all the guys. You've got the camaraderie. You've got the banter. You've got guys of a certain mindset. When you come out, you're kind of, it's like having the rug pulled from under you. And when I first, for instance, when I first left the army, I found it difficult. I found working in a civilian environment really, really frustrating. They just don't have that can-do mindset. Come 5 o'clock, that's it, the pin comes out, they're off, whether the job's finished or not. And I found that really difficult at first to deal with, which is why I ended up going back into the army.
Did you go from school, Tim? Did you join the army from school?
Yeah, I kind of joined almost straight from school. When I left school, I had about 6 weeks before I could join the army, and the first job I got was in Lone Star, which was a toy factory, and I was working on a hand press, just putting wheels on little metal cars.
Oh, wow.
I lasted 3 days.
Okay.
I lasted 3 days.
You lasted 3. But do you think that veterans who have gone in from school and have just they've not had job experience, but they've been in the army for however long, and then they come out, as opposed to someone who goes in, perhaps they've done a few jobs, then they go in. Do you think there's a difference in how they can cope with things when they leave?
There's possibly there is that possibility that they do have a little bit more experience. So I know guys that have come in, because I joined as a junior soldier at 16. So for me, it was kind of all I knew, and guys were coming in at sort of 18, 19-year-olds into adult training, had a little bit of work experience. They had slightly different attitude to what we did. I mean, we didn't know any better.
Yeah.
I mean, that's basically the way it drilled into us.
Yes.
But yeah, I think had you had a little bit of life experience beforehand, you may have coped a bit better coming out. But it hasn't changed. I mean, if anything, I think it's probably got worse. On the outside, people really don't give a monkeys about work. As long as they're getting the tuppence halfpenny at the end of the week, they do the bare minimum and walk away. And they don't
See, that's
have.
not me.
I think that's probably the reason that the government, whenever there's a crisis, turn directly first port of call, get the military in to sort it out.
Exactly. Yep, because they'll get it done.
Look at the pandemic when they were rolling out the vaccines. Look at a few years ago, we had some serious flooding in Caterham, or just outside Caterham on the A22. In fact, London District, they got the guards in there, and they were there building sandbags, sticking walls in to hold back the river and everything like that, because there was so much water, and it was there for weeks. But they called the military to sort it out because the local council couldn't do it.
No,
so
that's right.
I think that's the mindset that the military have, is that they get them in first, and because they'll get the job done. So
yeah, I mean, do you think the army is, when they release soldiers back into civilian life, it's like, there you go, there's your red book, thanks very much, off you go. There's no, well, there might be a little bit, but there's no help to get them back into civilian society or to adjust. They have to find their own way.
yeah, I think my last job as a welfare officer, we dealt with transition quite a bit, and that was one of the things that we worked with a transition officer. There was a transition officer in central London, in Horse Guards. We dealt a lot with him, with guys that were transitioning out. I think guys that are going out on their time, that have served their time, get the package. There's a package that they put them through. They get some training, you get some courses to go back into Civvy Street. There's not a busting amount of help for accommodation and stuff like that.
No.
Guys that are going out on medical type discharge, there's quite a lot of help. There's a whole sort of there's the PRC personal PRUs, personal recovery units, that have dedicated staff to help transition guys out that have been injured, that are going out on a medical discharge. They get a massive amount of help. Likewise, they go on to Help for Heroes, and they get loads and loads of support. The guy that's going out, that's done their time, doesn't get the same amount of assistance, and that's possibly wrong, I think. But guys do feel that once they've left, they've had the rug pulled under them. They go through this mindset that the frustration. They they struggle sometimes with just coping with civilian life, which is tragic, really.
Yeah.
And that's when the sort of and then if they start then developing some of the mental health issues that they've seen while they've been in, because sometimes when you're in it you don't you're just there doing the job, and all the stuff that you've seen, you just put to the back of your mind, and you just
You have to
concentrate
switch
on
off,
getting
don't
on.
you, Tim?
You
Yeah.
switch off to it, and the training kicks in. You just get on with the job. Once all that's gone, that's when it starts to sort of creep back in and start manifesting itself into dark periods in your life. You start having the odd drink in the evening, and then it starts getting out of hand. Then you start then things start sort of unraveling, and you start having, I mean, rucks where you're nearest and dearest, and before you know it, you're out on your ear, you're on the street, on your jack, living off your wits, from one bottle of spirit to the next, and before you
Yeah.
know it, you're in a hell of a state, and that's the unfortunate part of when you're transitioning out, and you haven't dealt with stuff you've seen when you've been in. Nowadays, I mean, there's an awful lot of help and assistance while you're in for dealing with trauma. When you're on operations, particularly, there's a trim process that they put you through when you've been in contact, you've lost mates and stuff like that. The trim team comes in and they take you through that process, and they're keeping an eye on you, and that helps. And I think that is going to help a lot of guys in a not too distant future. It's the group before that, the days of sort of, I guess, the Balkans days, when we were in the Balkans, when Kosovo, Bosnia, guys were. I mean, it was still a stigma to talk about mental health issues then.
Yes.
And then coming forward, that then starts manifesting itself into suicide, where suicide is still a stigma to this day. It's still, people find it difficult dealing with somebody that's committed suicide or tried to commit suicide. They're still dealt different, and they shouldn't be. Suicide is a mental health condition that is the same as any other problem. And although you can't see mental health issues, they are probably worse than a physical condition. I mean, you break a leg, you you go and get it fixed. You break your mind, yeah, it's and the system is broke. I mean, the system is under so much pressure. And we were saying earlier about combat stress, for instance. They are under so much pressure. They had to close their doors to taking on new cases. But there are a lot of other agencies out there that can help. And anybody that is struggling, I urge them to get out there and seek the help. There is so much help out there. So many people nowadays understand the problems that you're going through. And there's so many veterans charities out there, you wouldn't believe. Well over 2,000 veterans
Which is
charities.
good. And there, a lot of them are run by other veterans, aren't they, Tim?
Yeah. And they're run by guys that have been through it, that have been through the mill, that have had those difficult times in their lives.
But nothing's made. This is only through finding out yourself about who these people are. Because before I had problems with mental health, I didn't know any of these groups existed. And it's only through looking into this and networking and going down and talking to people at the Veterans Hub and SAFA that I found these other groups, splinter groups off of this, that are more, that are smaller, and they can help with housing and, just chatting to people. I mean, it really, we want to be helping veterans before they get to the stage of feeling that there's no way out for them. And I think that's a huge hole that needs to be filled.
Absolutely.
I mean, a
Absolutely.
lot of veterans don't know about a lot of these groups. It's how you move that over to, or make them aware of these charities and groups so they know who to go to.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I think that's something that that they try and highlight as much as they can when you're transitioning out. You go and see the resettlement officer, and he will give you a sort of an hour brief, and it's just belt fed, and he'll give you a pack of stuff, and away you go, and your mind's not really in it, really isn't, when you get your resettlement brief, and unless you're prolific about reading through all the stuff, then yeah, it's one of those things that the information's there, but 99 times out of 10, guys don't take it in.
No,
So
no.
consequently, when they come out, there's a lot more on their minds about finding a job, finding somewhere to live, and coping with life in general, that they forget that it's funny when guys leave the military,
Yeah,
they kind of fall into two categories. One, they don't want nothing to do with it until sort of about 20 years later, that they realise that they have been missing it, and there are like-minded guys 20 years on that want to be in touch again, and that's when they
yeah,
start coming to the gatherings and stuff like that. And there's
yeah.
guys that really struggle, and just want something to keep it going, and start going to some of these groups. So that's the two things that falls into.
Yeah. It's
So Velleta, what we're going to do now is I'm going to drop you down. I'm going to bring in one of the other guests shortly. Thank you
lovely.
so much so far. We'll bring you
Okay,
back
you're
in a bit
welcome.
later.
Hmm.
But because
Thank you
we're going
very
to break the
much.
show up once we finished, we're going to put it into 4 half-an-hour slots. Just going to give
Okay.
a bit of plug for what's going on now. The Thursday live streams that we do are fairly serious subjects.
Yeah.
So what I've decided to do is, on a Tuesday, we're going to have a fun night. So we started off a quiz, fun facts, and channel reviews on a Tuesday with myself and Keith. Keith's my little co-host who helps us out. He's the one working in the background tonight,
Yeah.
keeping an eye on
Wonderful.
the chat. So if you've got any questions for us, if you've got any comments, please put them in the chat box. We'll appreciate you guys getting involved. Ask us questions. It's a serious subject that we're trying to normalise and bring into the real world. Then next Thursday, the one you've been waiting for, the archaeological special. This one we had to unfortunately postpone due to our late Majesty, our blessed Queen, dying on us. So we pulled out at the very last second. And there you go. So that's what's coming up there next week. Then if I just jump to here, the week after, the 13th, we're still looking at a little special. Hopefully it's going to involve dogs. I'm just waiting for the guys to confirm that one. Probably going with a Q&A the following week, which will be fun. They're always fun. We always get some strange questions coming in. The following week, I'm working on another little project. Whether it'll come to fruition or not sure, but as it does, I'll let you know. And then the 3rd of November, I've got at the moment 2 American fighter pilots coming in, and I'm hoping to get a couple of UK fighter pilots as well. And we're going to look at the processes that they go through for their type of trim when they've been out bombing the crap out of places. So we're going to have a look at those. Drop that down. That's me back again. Hang on, I've got to switch around. Loosen the plot. You can also support me by maybe buying us a little coffee occasionally. Wouldn't help. Here's the link.
The Tim Heale Thirsty Thursday live stream from 7 until 9 weekly.